Hilchos Shmittah v'Yovel Perek Shloisha Asar. The laws of the sabbatical year and the Jubilee year, chapter 13. Today is the final chapter of the 7th book of the Rambam, 7 out of 14. We're finishing half of the amount of books in the Rambam's entire Mishnah Torah, a tremendous achievement. We're in the context of the laws of Yovel. One of the laws of the Jubilee year is that real estate that was sold during the last 50 years reverts back to its owner. But we've seen it's a little more complex than that. There's basically three categories of land: fields, houses in walled cities, and houses in regular cities. Fields have a law that says that when you sell them, you have to leave it by the buyer for a minimum of 2 years, then you can buy it back, and you buy it back by proportional deduction. If you don't buy it back, once the year 50 hits, it goes back anyways. Houses in walled cities, it goes the opposite. You have a year to buy it back. If you miss the deadline, it stays by the purchaser forever. Homes in regular cities have both advantages. You can buy it back right away, but even if you don't buy it back, in other words, even before 2 years, but even if you don't buy it back, it reverts back to you by Yovel. Today, in the final chapter, the Rambam talks about a special segment of the Jewish people, Shevet Levi, the tribe of Levi. They have a different way that they have even a portion of land in Israel, as we're going to see, and therefore they have different laws that relate to what happens to their portions of land when they sell their land. And in that context, the Rambam is going to broaden the subject to speaking about the tribe of Levi in general, their job within the larger Jewish framework, and how every single Jewish person could be a Levi in his own right, as we'll see in the end of the chapter. So the Rambam begins halacha aleph Shevet Levi, the tribe of Levi, afal pi she'ein lahem chelik ba'aretz. Even though they don't have an actual portion, an inheritance in the land of Israel, kvar nitztavu Yisrael, the Jews were already commanded in the Torah, litin lahem arim lasheves u'migreshehem, to give them cities to dwell in, and migreshehem. Migreshehem basically means outlying areas, an area outside the city. The ha'arim heim sheish arei miklat, these cities are the 6 cities of refuge, which we'll learn about in the Rambam's 10th book. There are 6 cities that if a person kills somebody inadvertently, he would have to run there and he could be saved. And these 6 cities were owned by the Levites. Va'alehen shtayim v'arba'im ir, plus another 42 cities, for a total of 48. Ukeshem meisifin arei miklat acheres b'mei HaMashiach. When the Jewish people are going to add 3 more cities of refuge in Mashiach's times, as the Rambam talks about in the very end of his work, in the end of the 14th book, HaKol HaLeviim, those additional cities of refuge will also belong to the Leviim, and they're going to own it in the same way that they own these other 48 cities. That's the Rambam's allusion with the word HaKol. All of these cities together are owned in the very same way. Halacha Beis, Migreshe Ha'arim, these outlying areas around the cities, Kvar Nisparshu B'Torah, they've already been explicitly declared in the Torah as being Shehem Shleishas Alafim Amma L'chol Ruach, a 3,000 Amma radius. It's not exactly a radius because it's actually extending in a square. They gain the corners as well. 3,000 Ammas L'chol Ruach in every direction, Mikir Ha'ir V'chutzar, from the wall of the city and outwards. Shenemar, as it says clearly, Mikir Ha'ir V'chutzar, Elef Amma Saviv, from the wall of the city and outwards, 1,000 amma going around. So that one verse says 1,000. And then, Ulahalonu Aimer, in the very next verse it says, and for some reason it's not here on the screen, I may have put in the wrong verses there. In the next verse it says, Umadoisem michutz la'ir, es pa'as kedma, you shall measure from outside the city on the eastern side, alpayim ba'amma v'goimer, 2,000 ammas. So literally from one verse to the next is a contradiction. One verse says 1,000 amma, one verse says 2,000 amma. So the way we resolve it is we say, actually, they're both true. You give them 3,000 ammas. Elef harishaynim migrash. The first 1,000 are simply like a city's outlying area, kind of like a park, just open land. V'alpayim shemoided chutz lamigrash l'sadeh sukramim. And then 2,000 ammas past that for the Levites' agricultural needs, for fields and for vineyards. Additionally, says the Rambam Halacha Gimel, v'noisnin l'chol ir, beis hakvares chutz l'tchum zeh. We also supply every city with a cemetery outside this border of 3,000 ammas. She'ein kavrin meiseyem mitchum areim. We don't force the Levites to bury their dead within the confines of their city. Shenemar, because it says clearly, umigreshehem, their outlying areas, yiyu, should be livehemtam v'lirechusham u'lechil chayasam, for their animals, for their possessions, and for all their livelihood, which means l'chayim nitnu v'lei l'kvura. They're meant to serve purposes of life, not to serve purposes of death, i.e. burial. Halacha dalid, ein oisin ba'arei haLevim. In the cities of the Levites, we're not allowed to transform. Ir migrash v'lei migrash ir. We can't transform the residential part of the city to the outlying areas, nor can we make outlying areas into a built city. V'lei migrash sadeh, v'lei sadeh migrash. Neither in the next set of areas. The outlying areas cannot become fields or vineyards. Neither should the fields or vineyards become outlying areas. Shenemar, because it says, Usadei migrash areihem lo yimacher, the field and the outlying areas of their cities should not be sold. Even though the word be sold literally means it shouldn't be sold, the Rambam also has an additional interpretation. Halacha hey umipi Shmuel lamdu, we learn from tradition, shezeh shenemar lo yimacher lo yeshuna. When Torah says it shouldn't be sold, it means it shouldn't be changed. Elo hasadeh v'hamigrash v'ha'ir. Rather, the three parts of every Levite city, the field, the outlying areas, and the actual city itself, kol echad mishloshtan k'mais shehu la'olam, each part of the three needs to remain as it is forever and stay that way, not be turned around. V'chein bishar arei Yisrael. The truth is the same applies in all other cities of Israel. Some say this line connects to the next halacha, that what does it mean that the same applies to the rest of Israel? Lo yister adam es beisei la'asei gina. A person shouldn't destroy his house to make it into a garden. V'lo yitach charvasei gina. Nor if he has a ruin, should he plant it into a garden. Shalei achrivu eretz Yisrael. We don't want to destroy Israel. Whatever the status quo is, we try to maintain it. Halacha zayin. Now that we know how the cities of the Levites are meant to be set up, we can also talk about the ramifications with regards to sale of these areas. Kohanim u'Leviim, Kohanim and Levites. The Rambam mentions both because Kohanim are part of the tribe of Levi for these matters. So either a Kohen or a Levi, shemachru sadem misdei areim, oy bayis mibatei arichayim shalahen. If they sell a field from the fields in their cities, or even if they sell a home from the home in their walled cities. So even though for Jews the laws of fields and the laws of walled cities, homes are very different. Ein goyalim kaseder hazeh. The Kohanim and the Leviim, they don't go about redemption and buying back their properties in this order that was dictated for the rest of the Jewish people. First of all, they can sell the fields whenever they want, even right before Yovel. The goyalim miyat, and they can buy it back right away. The mikdishu sadeh, even if they consecrated a field, goyalim miyad hekdesh la'achar Yovel, they can buy it back from the possession of the temple treasury after Yovel, even if Yovel passes. The goyalim batei arichayim kozman sheyirtzu, they can buy back cities, homes in walled cities whenever they want. Afilu achar kama shanim, even after the 1 year deadline, which for most Jews is the final deadline. Even after many years, they can do so. Shanemar, because the verse says, Geulas oilam tiyal alevim, an eternal redemption will belong to the Levites. They can always buy back their fields. So much so, says the Rambam, Yisrael sheyadash asavi imay Levi. If a regular Jew would inherit property from his grandfather who was a Levi. So here we have a grandfather Levi, has a daughter, only a daughter, so she inherits his estate. She gets married to a regular Israelite Jew, they have an Israelite son. So he ends up inheriting the possession, the property that belonged to the Levi. He can buy back this field that he owns now, like the Leviim, with their special rules, even though he's not a Levi. Since the cities or the fields themselves belong to the Levites, he can redeem it forever. Because this law depends on the places, not on the owners. On the other hand, the Levi if there's a Levi who has inherited his grandfather who was an Israelite, so you have an Israelite owned the field, has a daughter inherits the estate, she marries a Levi, so the kid's a Levi, this is a mistake, should say Levi here. He has to redeem the field like an Israelite, not like a Levite, even though he's a Levite. The only time that the Torah says the Levites have eternal redemption is in the cities that belong to the Levites, not in fields which they get from grandparents who are Israelites. Halacha Yud. Now that Rambam returns to the point he mentioned in passing in the beginning of the chapter. The very first words of the chapter was the tribe of Levi, even though they don't have a portion in the land, they still had 42 cities. Now, the Rambam just said those words, they don't have a portion in the land. So he talks now a little bit more about that. What exactly is this law that the tribe of Levi is not supposed to have an inheritance in the land of Israel? Says the Rambam Halacha Yud, Kol Shevet Levi, the entire tribe of Levi, Muzharin, are warned against, they are prohibited, Shalo Yinchalu Be'eretz Canaan, that they should not take an inheritance in the land of Canaan. And we'll soon see this word is very exact. Because in Halacha, you would think it should be called Eretz Yisrael, land of Israel. Why does he call it Eretz Canaan? Keep that in mind. They're not supposed to get any inheritance in the land. V'chein hein muzharin. So too they're also warned against, they're prohibited from, that they should not take any portion in the spoils of war when the Jews conquered those lands. Jews came into Israel, they had to conquer the land of Israel from the people that were living there at the time. Every time you conquer the spoils of war. Since they don't have a portion in the land, they don't get a portion in the spoils either. Shenemar, as it says in the verse, in the Torah, Lo yeh la'koyanim haleviim kol shevet Levi chelek v'nachala im Yisrael. There shall not be for the Kohanim, for the Leviim, from the same tribe. The entire tribe of Levi should not get chelek v'nachala, a portion or inheritance with the Jewish people. A double expression in the Torah, chelek babiza v'nachala ba'aretz. Chelek means a portion in the spoils, nachala means a portion of real estate in the land. The V'chein Merit also says, fascinatingly in this week's Parsha, Parsha's Kairach, Be'artzam loy sincha. Hashem told Aaron, in their land you shall not take an inheritance. V'chelek lo yeh lecha b'seicham. Nor shall you have a portion amongst them. Now you just said, no taking inheritance in the land. So what's the extra words? No portion amongst them. Babiza. It means no portion in the spoils. Uben Levi oikoyen shenot al chelek babiza loike. If a person of the tribe of Levi or a Kohen takes a portion of the spoils, they get lashes. If he takes real estate in the land, we simply remove him from it. There's a bit of a debate here. At what point do you get lashes? If you just take the spoils, or do you have to actually ruin it in a way that nobody else can benefit from it? What if you give it back? The commentaries say it's not so clear whether you get lashes just for taking it, or if you actively destroy it in a way that nobody else can get it. At any rate, that's the prohibition. Says the Rambam Halacha Yud Aleph Yeroeli, it seems to me, however, she'ein hadvarim amurim, that this law is only stated, ela ba'aretz shenichrisa lehabris la'Avraham liYitzchak u'leYaakov, only about the land upon which the covenant was declared with Hashem to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, v'yirashuha b'neiam v'nischalka lahem, which their sons later inherited, and it was divided amongst them. Only the biblical land of Israel. The land of Israel that was encompassed by the covenant that Hashem made multiple times in the Torah with the three forefathers. But any other land which any king of the Jewish people would later conquer, as did indeed happen, Kohanim and Leviim, when it comes to those lands and when it comes to the spoils of those lands, are exactly like any other Jew. They do get a portion and they do get real estate in the land. Now, before we expand on this a little bit more, let's do the next halacha. Halacha Yud Beis v'lama loizacha Levi b'nachalas Eretz Yisrael u'bebizasa yimechav. What indeed is the reason? Why did the tribe of Levi not merit to get an estate in the land of Israel or its spoils with their brothers? Mipnei shehuvda la'avodas Hashem. Because the tribe of Levi is separated, designated for a special job to serve Hashem, l'sharsai, to actively serve Him in the temple. And they're also meant to teach Hashem's upright, just ways and His righteous laws to the public. Shenemar, as the verse says, when Moshe Rabbeinu gave his final blessing to the tribe of Levi, he labeled them as those who are Yoiru Mishpatecha LeYaakov v'Seirascha LeYisrael. They teach your laws to Jacob and your Torah to Israel. So because, spiritually speaking, the tribe of Levi was separated, put aside for a higher level job, therefore they were also separated from the ways of the world. They don't wage war like the rest of the Jewish people. They don't inherit the land physically. Neither do they merit anything, acquire anything for themselves with their own power of their own bodies. Rather, they are God's army. Shenemar, as the very next verse says in Moshe Rabbeinu's final blessing, Barech Hashem Cheloi, Hashem should bless His own army. Tribe of Levi is God's personal army. They don't just fight any regular wars about lands to inherit lands. And instead of their own bodies acquiring stuff for themselves, Hashem acquires stuff for them and gives them whatever they need to have. Shenemar, as it says in the verse also, this week's Parsha, Ani chelkecha v'nachalascha, I am your portion, I am your inheritance. So now, in light of this halacha, we have to ask ourselves a basic question on the last halacha. If it's inherent to the tribe of Levi that they're not meant to inherit land because they're holier, so why should other lands be different? The reasoning seemingly is the same. So the Rebbe once dealt with this halacha at length. And he said, there's another discussion that's very much related to this. When Mashiach comes, will the tribe of Levi get an active portion in the land? So some say, the Minchas Chinuch seems to write that the Rambam holds no. But there are other authorities who clearly link the Rambam's opinion with the fact that the tribe of Levi will get a portion in the land when Mashiach comes. Which again requires a source. Where do you see that anywhere in Jewish law? And also, every mitzvah has to last forever. If there's a mitzvah, a prohibition against the tribe of Levi getting a portion in the land, how is that mitzvah going to go away when Mashiach comes? And if it does, by the way, any mitzvah which doesn't apply forever cannot be a mitzvah now among the 613. So if it's going to go away when Mashiach comes, it can't be one of the 613 now. So there are various answers that Rebbe brings. Some people say that the tribe of Levi is going to get their same 48 cities, just we're going to give it to them not as 48 individual cities, but as a general portion in the land. Or others say that it's going to be not in the land of Israel biblically, that's the prohibition, they're going to get it in the other lands. Some say if Hashem gives it to them, it's different. We can't give it to them, but God could give it to them. But the Rebbe has a better or a deeper answer. And he says, go back to that what I told you before in Halacha Yud, that the prohibition is in Eretz Canaan. Eretz Canaan is specifically the land of Canaan, not including the other lands that were also promised to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, what's called the Keni, Knizi, V'Kadmoni, the larger areas either in the Transjordan or under to the south of Israel. Over there, tribe of Levi is very much entitled to get a portion in the land. Hashem only said, Be'artzam lo yisinchal, in their land, in the land that the Jewish people will inherit, that's the land you can't get. Why? There's a logical difference. The land that the Jewish people conquered, the biblical land of Israel, was given to them as a place to settle, so they should have a place to settle like any other nation. So in that physical element of settling land, you're trying to settle land like any other nation in the world, tribe of Levi, since they're different, doesn't have a place in that land. But when you're dealing with other lands, lands that are given as a gift from Hashem, lands that are conquered in a war that was directed by Hashem, outside Be'artzam, outside the basic land of Israel, so then there's no worries. Tribe of Levi can definitely get from those lands. And the Rebbe says when Mashiach comes, that's probably where the tribe of Levi's land will be. In the land of Keni, Knizi, V'Kadmoni as a gift from God, and because it's a gift from God, that Rambam himself says in Halacha Yud Beis, a gift from God is God's way of providing tribe of Levi with what they need. It's not in violation at all, or in contradiction at all, to the prohibition against giving Levi a portion in the land. The Rebbe, as an aside, says, okay, so if that's the case, then when Mashiach comes, we know that all Jews are going to be learning Torah. All Jews are going to be separated from worldly matters. So maybe all Jews shouldn't get a portion in the land. So the Rebbe says, yeah, but that's not because the Jewish people are going to become inherently like that. The world's going to allow for it. So technically speaking, the Jews can be separate from the world. But inherently, the Levites will always remain inherently separated. Or even if you say that Rebbe adds in a note, even if you say that the Jewish people's inherent nature will be changed when Mashiach comes, the tribe of Levi will always be higher than them, because they'll have the job of Lahidos, of teaching Hashem's laws. And there's another big discussion that can't be glossed over here, and that is the Ravid's question in Halacha Yud Aleph. The Ravid says, the Ravid is the primary commentator on the Rambam, he says, how could you say, Rambam, that the Levites could get a portion in any other land that the Jews conquer? There's a clear story in the Torah coming up in a few weeks, the war with Midian. Jewish people went to wage war with Midian, and in the end, everybody got a portion of the spoils, except for the tribe of Levi. The tribe of Levi got a special truma, special kind of donation, a tax almost, from the spoils with a specific command from Hashem. So the Ravid says, you see that even in a different land, they didn't get a portion, only what Hashem commanded. So the Kesef Mishnah retorts to that, what do you mean? That's the source for the Rambam. You see that they were in a different land, and because it wasn't the land that Hashem had promised to Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, so Hashem gave the command to give the tribe of Levi something, a tax, a portion in the spoils. Now the Rebbe says, and this is very rare, the Rebbe says, Tzarich iyun gadol. The Kesef Mishnah's answer requires great analysis, because it's clear in the Torah that Hashem didn't give the tribe of Levi this portion as a portion of the spoils. It was specifically a tax. It wasn't a part like everybody else. The Rebbe gives his own answer, based on the Ramban, who famously writes, and the Bechaya also famously writes this, that the war of Midian wasn't about getting land. It was about waging a war of vengeance, revenge for Hashem. Nekaim nikmas Hashem, or Nekaim nikmas b'nei Yisrael. And because of that, it didn't have a definition of waging war for inheritance, and therefore all these laws didn't apply. So you can't bring a proof either way from it. The Rebbe says there's a bit of a problem for the Rambam, because the Rambam himself, in the end of his book, the Laws of Kings, seems to include the war of Midian with any other war that the Jews waged for conquering. So the Rebbe kind of refines his answer, and he says, the war of Midian actually had two parts. There was an element of conquering, but mainly it was an element of war, of nekama, of revenge for Hashem, which, by the way, explains why the tribe of Levi took part in the war. Forget the whole discussion here, how they got spoils. Tribe of Levi was commanded to go to war. And Rambam in Halacha Yud Beis says that part of the tribe of Levi's being separate from the world means that they're not supposed to wage war. So how could they wage war? Obviously, because it's a different type of war. This was a war of God. And as the servants of God, the primary servants of God, they had to be the ones to fight this war. And with that, the Rebbe kind of closes the issue on the Rambam versus the Ravid. And from here we go to the final halacha in this chapter, the final halacha of this entire 7th book of the Rambam, where the Rambam takes this message of the tribe of Levi being separate from the world, and he expands it to being applicable to every single Jew. The Rebbe spoke about this halacha hundreds of times as a proof that every Jew can become a Levi, not physically, but spiritually. Every Jew can raise his or her aspirations and become greater than they think they can be. And when we try our best, Hashem actually pulls us up to that level. And we'll see the Rambam's words inside, and I'll try to interpolate some of the literally hundreds of pieces of commentary that the Rebbe has in this halacha in the limited time that we have. Says the Rambam, halacha Yud Gimel, v'loi shevet Levi bilvat. All this great stuff that we're talking about, the tribe of Levi, doesn't only apply to the tribe of Levi themselves in the physical sense. Ela kol ish va'ish mikol ba'ei ha'elam. Every man and man, from everybody who enters the world. These are extra expressions. Could have said kol ish. Why kol ish va'ish? The Rebbe says it includes both categories of people. Whether you're what's called marei Torah or marei uvdin tavin, you're into Torah study or you're into deeds. You're an intellectual or you're a doer. You're Yisachar or Zvulun. You're engaged in holy pursuits or you're engaged in physical pursuits. Ish v'ish in many places in the Talmud even includes women, even includes children. Mikol boy ha'olam sometimes even includes goyim. Gentiles can do this. The Rebbe once, or a few times actually said. Every single person on the planet, asher nodvar ruchay oisai, if his spirit generously motivates him. The Rebbe proves from multiple places, ruchay is the reference to the heart. The emotions in the heart motivate him. Vehevinoi madoi, and his intellect also helps him understand. So we have the intellect and the heart. Well, Shem Tov used to always say, wherever a person's mind and heart is, that's where he is. So if your mind and heart motivate you, they motivate you to live a higher life. And the Rambam chooses his words carefully. Lihi badil. Your mind and heart motivate you to be separated, not to be divorced from the world and completely not engaged with the world. In the end of the day, our job is to bring heaven down to earth, bring earth up to heaven. Just he chooses the word lihi badil. Separate means you raised above. You're there, but you know that you're higher, you know that you're different. And besides for what's called sur meira, removing yourself from bad, you also go for va'asei toiv, you do good positively, lamed lifnei Hashem l'shar sayu la'avdai, to stand before God and to actively serve Him and to minister to Him, l'deyo es Hashem, so that you know God. And then your mind and your heart's motivation carry down to practical action. V'holach yashar k'moshe aso ha'elikim, you go in the straight path, the way God made us. It says in Koheles, Elokim asa es ha'adam yashar, God made the person to be straight. And so your mind and heart are motivating you to live in this new lifestyle. And then, as the Rebbe explains the next line, uparak me al tzavarei, you remove, you lift from your neck, oil ha'cheshbeinis harabim asher bikshu b'nei ha'adam, the yoke of the many calculations which people look for. What does this mean? That means, when you're motivated in your mind and in your heart, it's very easy to feel inspired. But then when the things actually land on your neck and you have to actually live the lifestyle, there all the pleasure is gone. Your endurance and your determination have to keep you going, and you have to lift that yoke off your neck. Don't let it weigh you down. If you do all of this, if you follow in this path, says the Rambam, Harei kodesh kadashim, the person becomes holy at a level of holy of holies. Truth is even more than a Levi. Who's called holy of holies? Not only a Kohen, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. You can come on, every Jew can come to the level of the high priest. And just like the tribe of Levi gets supported by Hashem, V'yiyeh Hashem chelkoi v'nachalasai, Hashem will become your portion and your inheritance, using the same two words, chelek v'nachala, real estate and movable property, portions on both levels of your life, la'olam u'la'ol me'elamim, forever and ever. And the Rambam uses the words la'olam, world, in the singular, u'la'ol me, two more worlds in the plural, olamim, again, two more worlds. So we have 5 worlds in total that corresponds to the 5 levels of the neshama. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida, as the Rabbi explained it. And what about parnasa? If you become such a high person, such a raised person, how do you make a living? Just like the Levi, says the Rambam, v'yizkeloi ba'olam hazeh, davar hamaspik loi. Hashem will give you, He'll make you merit in this world something which is enough for you. And the Rebbe once explains it in two different ways. Once he explained it means like minimum, get just what you need. Other times he would say it means parnasa b'harchava. You get in abundance your sustenance and the things that you need. In the very same way that the Kohanim and the Leviim were supplied by Hashem directly with everything that they needed. You know how I know this, as the Rambam? You know the biggest proof for this? Harei David alav hashalem aimer. David, may he rest in peace, said in Psalms. David wasn't a Levi. The Rambam doesn't even call him David HaMelech, David the king. David the king is the unattainable, the great David. The Rambam just calls him David. Who was the regular David in Tanakh? He's called Admaini. He was a redhead. Dam l'roiv shafachta. Hashem accused him of spilling too much blood. He represents the ultimate battle that a human faces within himself. And this same David said, what did he say? Hashem minos chelki v'choisi. Hashem, you became the portion of my lot. Ata toimich geroli, you support my lot. David lived this way, and Hashem indeed became his portion. And David is the living proof for every single Jew that we could also attain this level. Granted, the Rambam uses the word, or the Pasuk uses the word taimich, which means support. The Jew still has to do something. Hashem only supports. But there are certain levels where Hashem literally becomes fully your supporter. You don't even have to do anything. Hashem takes care of you completely. The Rebbe once noted that seemingly this halacha seems to be a stira, a contradiction to the last halacha. The Rambam just said that Levi is different than everybody else, and now we're saying everybody can be like Levi. So the Rebbe says this is the power of the Jewish person. Torah might hand down certain definitions, the way Torah and the written Torah was given down. But the Torah Shabbal Peh, the oral Torah, the way the sages carry it through and the way the Jews apply themselves to the Torah, they can raise themselves in a way that can make them even higher than the original parameters that Torah sets forth. And the Rebbe would say that this also connects to this week's Parsha, Parsha's Korach. Everyone looks at Korach as a negative person, but Korach really had good intentions. He wanted to be a Kohen Gadol. He wanted to live higher. Yeah, he went about it the wrong way. He did the wrong things, but his mind and heart were in the right place. So we too have to be in that space. And Hashem promises, Ani chelkecha v'nachalascha, I'll be your portion. The Rebbe used to use this again in hundreds of different occasions. He would say, anytime you feel like you're in galut, you feel like you're in a personal imprisonment, use this halacha to rise above and become higher, bring yourself a personal redemption. Never think you're too small. Never think you can't be what anybody else could be. Because when you apply yourself right, you can rise kodesh kadashim to the level of holy of holies. Brich rachamana desayan, blessed is Hashem, who grants us assistance. Nigmar sefer shvi be'ezras shakai, we've concluded the 7th book with Hashem's help. Uminyan prakim shall sefer zeh, chamisho u'shmainim, with the number of chapters in this book, 85 chapters. Hilchos kilayim eser prakim, 10 chapters for the laws of mixtures. Hilchos matnes aniyin eser prakim, 10 chapters for the laws of gifts to the poor. Hilchos Truma is Chamisha Asar Prakim, 15 chapters for the laws of Truma, the gift to the Kohen from our crops. Hilchos Meiser Sabah Asar Prakim, 14 chapters for the laws of Meiser, the gift to the Levies from our crops. Hilchos Meiser Sheni Veneta Revoi Achad Asar Prakim, 11 chapters for the second tithe and the plants of the 4th year which we bring to Jerusalem. Hilchos Bikurim Mashar Matnes Kuna Shebagvulin Shnei Asar Prakim, 12 chapters for the laws of the first fruits and other Kohanic gifts in Israel. Hilchos Shmittah V'Yovel Shleisha Asar Prakim, the laws of the sabbatical year and the Jubilee year, 13 chapters of that. Mazel Tov for concluding the 7th book of the Rambam.